Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. We have a video for you today that I think will relate to a lot of folks. It is a big piece of the puzzle that a lot of us wait for all year, and sometimes it's even labeled Bucktober, right? So I always like to touch on this, guys, is there's so many different time periods, I guess you could say, and phases that cover so many different people. It's pretty easy to flip the channel on, or flip the my channel on, but flip any channel on YouTube, and really get like October only talking about the Midwest. And my clientele, guys, reaches from Kansas to Maine and from Michigan to Florida. So it's hard to say, okay, this is an only October video, but the word October, right, does affect the time period October, often referred to as Bucktober. It does affect a lot of folks. So we're going to touch on that topic, right? So October is just around the corner. Maybe by the time you're seeing this, probably a week out, right? Or less than a week. How do you make your season this year the best season, or the best October in general, since we're on the October topic? How do you make your October this year better than any October has ever been? We're going to touch on three points, guys, that I think all of us, whether you're north, south, east, or west in the whitetail range, can do better to make that a possibility. So this one here, guys, is something that we touch on a lot, but we're going to touch on it again here this morning. I really believe that the number one way to make your property better and only gain more traction throughout the entire month of October is make sure that that pressure is not applied. And it sounds very repetitive, guys, but I do this for a living. This is not a side job. This is my bread and butter. And I'm here to tell you that on a national spectrum, with the whitetail obviously in the center of that spectrum, I see that October is where properties are broke. And the reason for that is maybe the temperatures start cooling down a little bit, and folks start implementing their fall strategies for morning hunting way too soon. So morning hunting too soon equates to high pressure, period. That's just, there's a select few areas that maybe that doesn't affect as much, but we won't even talk about those because they're so minute in the pressure spectrum, if you will, or in the whole topic spectrum, that they don't need to be talked about. Because if you treat your property as if you were treating your property, or wherever you're going to hunt, if you're traveling or you're hunting public ground or whatever the case is, if you treat that area, that property, with high pressure deer mentality, that property will continually keep giving to you. But if you go into it and you go into that with the go too strong mentality, you're going to have a long season. So like I said, guys, this is the law of averages, right? Now, I'm not saying that there's not a certain cold front that comes through that doesn't spark that interest and get that morning hunt into motion. I had one last year. I hunted my first morning last year, guys, October 11th, which is almost unheard of for me. So if you're watching this, you're probably saying under your breath or out loud, here he is preaching, don't hunt mornings in October, and then he tells us that he's hunting a morning. And the reason that happened, guys, is I'm not saying never do it, don't do it. I'm saying put it on the back burner unless one of those cold fronts, that major change in something happens. And we had one of those last year, October 11th. And that first morning sit, guys, I drew back on the buck I ended up killing, which is right here, old Bus, that I ended up killing with my gun later in the season. And I drew back on him, and the arrow fell off the rest. And that in itself is a different long story. But so that's why I waited until that happened, because it was the right time, the right stand. That stand was not burnout. I think I had hunted it. It's a stand that I can hunt AM or AM and PM, but mostly I don't even attempt to hunt at PM in the early season. I think that was only the second sit. I had one evening sit in it before, and then I waited until that happened, and it just happened to be October 11th. So can it happen? Yes, but is it something that I'm telling you to put at the forefront of your strategies? Absolutely not. And here is why. You're probably the only one in 20 plus miles around you doing that. So it sounds crazy. It sounds simple, but man, I'm telling you, when you're hunting these deer this early in the year, already in the morning, you're applying so much of that pressure. Them deer, then you throw the moon. We had a full moon last week, last week, I believe it was. And you throw that into it, and all of a sudden, guys, these deer are so far ahead of you in the morning that they're already back to bed. And then, it just creates these big roadblocks that were blowing deer out. And then the folks that consistently think that we need to be hunting on the edge of fields in the morning are blowing deer out of those areas. And you start that chain of pressure, like I say, guys, that you will not catch. Now, maybe the pre-rut and the rut comes around, and maybe you're able to capitalize on that same deer because he was on his feet more. But don't think for a minute that situation happened and it's okay to apply pressure early. And it's just luck at that point, guys. It's not the high standard of your low pressure strategy, which it needs to be. So the second point, guys, that I have really honed my strategies on over the last several years is this. Because I'm focused more on a PM hunt situation in October, especially the 1st of October, right? The first few weeks of October, there is a huge attraction that is super overlooked. And like I said, it's not a secret if you're a regular of the channel. Guys, if you have a spot on the farm that you can, it might take a little brain power, right? It might take a little head scratching to figure that out. But if you have a spot on the farm that you can get into and hunt a PM hunt over a water source, meaning put one of those 300-gallon tanks in there months ago, right? Put it in there and be able to take advantage of October PM, especially over the last couple of years when it's been so dry. I say that, and the reason I'm checking up on that is because of what we just got hit with this week, or we're getting hit with right now. Probably be over by the time you watch this, but the big storm, the big hurricane that pushed all this water into the Midwest that we ever so needed, has dumped a lot of rain, and there's a lot of those water holes now full again, right? So is it the strong draw that it was 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago when we were right in the middle of a month drought? No, but I'm here to tell you guys that water source, correctly placed in the right area, will trump another water source that may be bigger, another water source outside of his and or a promoted line of travel every time. So if you can find one of those, I highly recommend studying that, looking at that, making sure your thermals are right, making sure your wind is right, putting the two of them together, the wind and thermal, making it a bulletproof area, going the extra mile to make sure it makes sense. The goal is, guys, is like I said, is to pick that area and to find that promoted line of travel that's between dry bedding and food. And what I mean by dry bedding, guys, so there's two definitions to dry bedding. One, obvious, is what it is. It's dry, right? The area that those deer are bedded in is dry, meaning that you're not creating these areas for better habitat. Let's say this time of the year, if we do get a rain like we got, that is swamped, right? It's low. You want to pick those areas that are consistently, usually dry over the month of October. The dry in general, but especially right now since we're on this topic. So they're bedded dry. That's the one version of the topic, right? The second of that is they're bedded dry, meaning they're eating all dry roughage. And if they're eating all dry roughage all day long, they are wanting an excuse. They're searching for an excuse to get up out of that bed and go to water before they go to a food source. Most folks would think, well, they're in their bed, they're going to go get something to eat, and then they're going to wash it down. They have been eating more in that bed than they will out on a evening food source. So depending on where you're at in the country, right, that browse power is it's powerful everywhere, but it's so important the further north you go. Here where I'm at in Kentucky, 75% of the deer's intake here in the state of Kentucky is woody browse. So if you take that into play, right, if you start thinking about that, what you'll find is it makes the water source even more important. So the further you go north, I hear this all the time, the further I go north, the less important water is. Absolutely not. Guys, you can have a foot of snow on the ground, and they would rather drink out of a area that's stagnant water, cool, or warmer water versus cool water. Hence the reason they get themselves in trouble with EHD. They seek warmer water. They are not built like us, where they want a cold drink of water. You could have a creek running through your property and you think you have all kinds of water, right? And you put a 300-gallon water tank 20 yards from that, in front of a promoted stand location, let's say, they will water out of that tank 10-1 versus that creek. Will they water in the creek? Yes. Will they water out of their hoof prints? Yes. But it's stagnant water in their line of travel. It's a magnet. Don't overlook that. So if you have one of those, key in on it. Try to, if you're looking at how to do that for next year, or if you choose to have us come out on the property and help you with that, I'm always looking for those. I find, to be honest with you, I find more AM water sources than I do, not because I'm looking at bettering a pre-rut or a rut stand at all. I just find more AM locations for water than I do PM, but I'm always looking for them. So I'm pretty blessed here on the farm here in Kentucky, guys. I have 3 of my 4 water holes I can hunt in a PM, and that very rarely happens. And I think 2 of which I can hunt AM and PM. So it's a big focal point, right? So spend more time this time of the year on that strategy than your strategy of going to a box blind sitting over top of a food plot, and your success, guys, will go through the roof. So on to the third and probably most important, but probably the most controversial as well of the 3. Guys, I think there are so many properties going into, whether you're an October opener or if you were a September opener like Kentucky, and you're throwing now you're getting to a point that your third 30 days, let's just say 30 days, 20 some days, right, into a season. And now guys already start throwing Hail Marys. So, and the reason for that is this, because your corn piles that everybody's sitting over top of in Kentucky are burnt out, and then they move to the oaks, and instead of just moving to the oaks, they're moving to the oaks and they're taking corn in there too. That corn right now is not near as important to them, or palatable, if you will, let's say, or attractive, I guess I could say. Maybe it's the same palatability, but it's not as attractive. It's not the pull that it was before, because there's other food, right? So they're kind of, they're going here to eat, they're going there to eat, now they got the browse. But you throw this pressure spectrum in there, guys, and even that makes your corn, the power of your corn, go away. And why do I touch on that? Because I believe it's directly connected to this. Like I said, very, very touchy subject. I'm probably going to upset a lot of people by saying this one, but it's the God honest truth. The number one thing that I see that destroys more properties in the month of October, a lot of months, but the month of October especially, because there's so much good to follow it, is hunting does. Hunting does early, guys, and I'm going to touch on some important facts here that you probably don't hear a lot of other places. One, it's just the drama and the pressure that it creates. I get it. There's no better feeling in the world than going there. You've been waiting all year to release an arrow downrange, and October 1 comes in. Maybe you took my advice and you're not hunting an AM and you slide in untouched on a PM, maybe a shot plot, and you're picking away from them on the outside and you think, boy, I got it all figured out. The does come in, maybe you let 2 or 3 go right before dark. It's like, I'm going to shoot a doe. You shoot a doe, guys, Murphy's Law kicks in, and she's going to go in somewhere where you wouldn't normally go in to, look at, hang a tree stand, or she's going to blow into the core or something like that. So here's my rule of thumb. If you would not go in there to do late season prep, right? Anything after September 1st, let's say, if you would not go in there and disturb that area, why in the world is it okay to send a wounded doe in there and go in there and get her out of there? It's the same theory, guys. Once you create that, and I get it, like I said, tuning in the bow, making sure you're on, I get it. Fill in the freezer if you need venison. I understand it. There's a time and there's a place for that, and it's not October 1. So really think about that one. Really think about this, guys. One of the most important pieces of this training tool that I can give you, that I try to teach folks, is because everyone else is doing it. You have to be doing something different in most areas around the country. You have to be doing something different than everybody else is doing to make your property the property that is actually being seeked, right? Why you're being seeked this time of the year is because you're low pressure, right? So look around you. Shooting does early is one of the major things that everybody else is doing. If you don't do that, you're something different, right? So the other piece of this is this, guys, probably the most important piece of it. Like I said, yes, I get it. It helps with doe numbers. The theory is we get doe numbers down. There's not as many does there, so your rut isn't spread out as much. You don't experience the lockdown. That's all hogwash, guys. Those properties that they experience the lockdown as much as you're experiencing it are on properties that your habitat is not correct, and or you don't have enough correct areas. In other words, you might have one spot that's correct, but on 80 acres, let's use an 80, you should have 4, 5, 8, 10 locations that are correct instead of one. So here we go, right? You go to a box blind. This is what happens. You go to a box blind and you see 30 does, right? Hunting a box blind over a food plot is not where you want to take a doe census in October. It's hopefully, you got some rain and the food plots look good. This is the point, guys. If you take them doe numbers, those doe census numbers, it's just as much of a wrongdoing as if you were to take that doe census in December, January, where there's hardly any other food, and you're taking doe census over a feeder or a corn pile or a green food plot, a standing bean field, something like that. Well, it's a no-brainer. You're going to draw deer in from miles away. The example I use, guys, that'd be like the county going to Walmart and taking a county census from Walmart. Well, here's the deal. On, let's say, a Sunday afternoon after church, well, everybody is stopping at Walmart at that point. It's busy, right? That's like taking a county census. Like I said, you don't know where everybody's from, right? Now, you advance the clock 4 hours, everybody's placed back in their areas all over the county, and all of a sudden, you're overpressured. Too many people in one area thought, and numbers goes way down. The reason is you're compartmentalizing your farm. You're compartmentalizing people back in to where their habitat is, where their homes are, right? It's the same thing in the deer world. So that's why I don't do that, right? You're taking false information and implementing it into your habitat strategies, into your management strategies. And here's the biggest point that I want to touch on that you don't hear from anybody else. Guys, this is something that I've been studying for years. I have experience, obviously. If you guys follow along with me and know a little history of me, you'll know that I used to manage high fence ranches years ago and didn't hunt in them myself. I just used them. Not that anything is wrong with that, but I used that as a tool. We had breeding facilities, we had high fence ranches. I'd go to work there, and then I was hunting out on public ground, or I was hunting out on my own ground, my owned property, or leased property somewhere else, or traveling out of the state. There's so much you can learn from that, guys. And the biggest piece here is this. You're always told that healthy fawns make healthy bucks, right? We're always told that. It's you look at whether it's Bronson Strickland, whether it's, the Mississippi State Deer Lab, whatever the case is, whoever you follow, Doc Deer, whoever you follow, right, will always tell you that one of the most important features of a healthy deer herd is healthy fawns, healthy fawn recruitment, healthy fawn habitat, healthy fawn nutrition. And here we are in September and October sending arrows downrange at does that are still lactating and still fueling these fawns. To me, it might sound ridiculous to a lot of people, but to me, guys, and my findings, it really can hurt. And the reason for that is, now, I'm all about if you knew that you were actually harvesting a dry doe, then maybe there's something to be said for taking that doe out and lowering the mouth or the intake, the browse pressure on your property. But it doesn't take away the pressure, right? You're still got to create the pressure you're still creating the pressure by going in and getting that doe out. So, in other words, like I said, things to do maybe to help that, right? If you do shoot a doe, go in, park the truck closest you can get to her, the ATV, let the motor run, even have somebody in there and maybe rev it up, not extremely rev it up, but I mean rev it up a little bit, cover your noise, use big flashlights, blow things out of there, and then get out. The last thing you want to do is be sneaking through the woods with little flashlights trying to find a doe. Here's the fact, guys, is you put those two together, the hunting does early, pressure spectrum, and harvesting does that are still lactating and still fueling these fawns. Now, is it cholesterol? Absolutely not, but it's still a huge piece to get those fawns jump started to the next level, right? Jump starting them into their first phase of nutrition. It's something very huge, guys. So one of the key features I'll show you on that is I've got friends all over the country that are still in that high fence world, if you will, or breeding facilities or raising deer. I don't know what the number is, guys, but there are a lot of world record deer, world record bucks that were bottle fed, that maybe the doe, maybe she died during birth or giving birth to the fawns. Maybe she just rejected the fawn, whatever the case is. But there's a lot of research and a lot of proof out there that some of those bucks are even given more bottle fed, milk wise, supplemental feed to jumpstart their initial growth cycle. So that's probably the most important one for me, guys. Now, if you got 20 acres, 40 acres, the comments I get all the time are this: well, we're not really going to, affect it. What I do is not going to affect anything as a big piece of the puzzle. And that's a video I got coming down the road here. Just how important is your 20 acres or your 40 acres? It's a way more important, I think, than a lot of folks realize. And we're going to go down that road on this probably the next video coming here. So take that one to heart, guys. Tie all of that together and really look at where you fit into that, and maybe start asking questions around. Maybe take your property as an example. Start looking around. Okay, drive around in the mornings. Take one morning instead of hunting. Drive around the community. How many trucks do you see? How many people are at their camps? If there's nobody, if there's no pressure in the mornings, well, you might be one of those areas that could implement a little morning hunting and not, maybe not ruin as much as you think you are. But start asking questions about who's shooting those guys, and I think what you'll find is all of a sudden you start taking yourself out of this triangle of pressure, if you will, or triangle of three things, 3 points on a triangle that we're talking about. You start taking yourself out of that triangle, put yourself in your own little circle over here, and it will shock you how much you can just transform a property into something totally different that it wasn't that last October. I often tell my clients this, guys, is there's a couple ways to make your property 100% better, 75% better than it was last year. Don't, hunt your property in the morning. Don't hunt your does. Those two pieces together, guys, take a lot of properties to the next level without even talking about manipulation as far as habitat or creating habitat, guys. I'm telling you, it's a huge, huge, huge piece of how your property is going to perform. Let's just use the Midwest, or from Kentucky where I'm at north, how that's going to perform Halloween weekend. Now down south, advance that amount, how your property is going to perform Thanksgiving, the first week of December, when things really get kicking. Is your property going to be the one that still has fuel left in the tank, or are you going to be the guy at the gas station trying to fill up that tank and trying to get a bunch of fuel, promoting something trying to make something that's not going to happen, trying to save it, right? So take that one to heart, implement your final strategies with your area that you are in, and I think that'll help you guys.